Am I the a-hole for gloating to my ex's husband when my daughter chose me alone to fill a father of the bride role in her wedding? I have one daughter, Rosie, 25 female. Her mother and I divorced when she was 2 after I learned she was having an affair with John. John claimed he was Rosie's biological father, so a DNA test was done. I'm her bio father. I don't think it surprised many, since Rosie looks a lot like me. My ex and John married once the divorce was finalized, and John became the biggest thorn in my side. He has always bragged about how I'm not Rosie's only dad, and how she would grow up with both of us. He taunted me with things like, "She'll like me more one day. You're just one of her dads now. You'll lose them both to me someday," and things of that nature. My ex wanted me out of the picture, so she allowed this as she thought I would give up. But I love my daughter, and despite my hatred for them both, I was calm and civil when my daughter was present, and watched my words even when she wasn't. John had been married when he and my ex started their affair, and during the divorce he learned both the kids involved were not his. He never saw them again. John and my ex never had any children together either, so he became determined to take over as Rosie's dad. John asked to adopt Rosie 6 different times while she was young, and she told me about it every time. He and ex attempted to change her last name to theirs and were denied by the judge. He even attempted to get my daughter to follow in his shoes to become an accountant. When Rosie was 14, I was injured significantly and ended up in the hospital for several months and spent several more in rehab recovering. John took great pleasure in being there while I was not. He often painted it like I was some deadbeat. Rosie was never John's biggest fan, but that was the year he truly poisoned their relationship. She decided she wanted to join my business when she finished high school. I set her up as an apprentice so she could learn from my team, and it has been amazing. Now Rosie's engaged, and she asked me to walk her and her fiancé, Seb, down the aisle, and to dance with both of them. Seb does not have parents, and he and I have been close since Rosie met him 6 years ago. I was honored to be asked to do this for both of them. John was enraged when he heard about this. He approached me while I was grabbing groceries and told me her fiancé can do whatever, but he's Rosie's dad, and he should be dancing with her and walking her down the aisle. I was like, you know what, screw it, and gloated about the fact she asked me over him. I told him Rosie told him exactly what he deserved, nothing. He said I should appreciate what he has done for Rosie more, but I just gloated more. My ex and John both said I was an a-hole and said I should not be so petty. My sister suggested, while not wrong overall, that maybe it would make Rosie's life harder with her mom and John, and this is what gave me pause. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. In general, gloating is an a-hole move, but John brought all of this on himself. He has been working to turn Rosie against you from the get-go. Piece of advice, going forward, handle this issue with grace. I am not advocating for the high road. I'm actually advocating for even deeper revenge. The more grace you show, the better life you live, the greater relationship you have with Rosie and your future grandchildren, and the more it will tick him off. Yes, I like this response. Gloating is typically childish, but this guy has it coming. I agree with all of this, but I do think OP's sister is wrong. Rosie's 25 now and getting married. Presumably, she won't live with her mom and John, and her mom seemingly did nothing to protect her from John's terrible behavior. If anything, it sounds like she encouraged it. So Rosie's life being difficult to the two of them sounds frankly irrelevant, as she may very well cut them off or at least go low contact. Not the a-hole. By your account, since Rosie was 2 years old, you've held it together, biting your tongue both in her presence and outside of it, for 2 decades. I'd say your soul has reached its limit of proverbial bootprint areas. Everyone has limits to which they can tolerate being dehumanized and disrespected. You've rightfully reached yours. Rosie's now an adult, and if she were unable to handle any repercussions that would ensue from her wedding requests, she wouldn't have made said requests. One minor outburst by you, which is what this was, minor, isn't going to overshadow the 2 decades worth of superhuman composure you've demonstrated to her. If anything falls on Rosie due to this instance, she'll handle it with resolve. Not the a-hole. He's a better person than me because I couldn't endure something like that for so long. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to do any more joint parties with my ex for our kids? I have 3 kids with my ex-wife, Sammy. We divorced when our youngest was still a baby. Our kids are now 11, 10, and 8, and Sammy has been married to Joe for the last 2 years. Sammy and I disagreed a lot on parenting, which is ultimately what drove us apart. We did mediation and co-parenting classes during our divorce, recommended by the judge. The recommendation was that we communicate about schedules and parenting conflicts on the Our Family Wizard app, but to try and work on coming together for our kids, so we did just that. Discussed parenting via the app and try to show we could be civil in front of our kids. We even did some joint parties together for birthdays and such. However, ever since Sammy married Joe, things have changed. He's a lot stricter than Sammy, and he has undermined me in front of the kids a number of times. And both Sammy and Joe have become annoyed when kids listen to me over Joe. Examples: our 11-year-old had a family day to raise money for his football team. We went together, and it was my parenting time, so the kids were home with me that week. They had lemonade there for people to drink and water and fruit juice. My oldest wanted lemonade and asked me if he could get some. I said of course, and said after that he could not, that he was only allowed water and knew that. I encouraged him to go ahead and told him that the kids were allowed more than water with me. The same day my youngest wanted to join his older siblings on the bounce house. I said sure, and I would go watch to make sure he was okay. Joe said it was not a good idea and should stay with them. Another time at my daughter's birthday party at my house in my parenting time, she wanted to know if I would come and let her and the other kids bounce me around on the bounce house. Joe butted in and said he didn't want her having an adult on with kids. This kind of thing happens frequently. I have mentioned it to them that I do not appreciate it and I do not interfere on their parenting time. But I have been dismissed repeatedly, and Joe has told me that I am not a good parent and they don't approve. So I decided no more joint stuff like this. We can attend the same functions, but we should not all sit together and stop the throwing joint parties with both sides. I spoke to my kids and they said it might be better, since their mom and Joe don't like when they listen to me over Joe. I informed my ex and Joe, and they said I was an ass and was not putting the kids first. I responded that it was them not putting the kids first, but disrespecting me in front of the kids. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Sounds like your kids get it. Joe needs to back off and mind his own business. They're not his kids to raise. He can support your ex, not decide for her or for you. He has no place in that discussion. If he didn't like her parenting style, he shouldn't have married her in the first place. Yeah, and him undermining OP's parenting right in front of him feels like power play of sorts. It's disrespectful and ultimately not in the best interest of the kids. Yeah, it puts the kids in an unwinnable situation. Either they agree with their dad and are in trouble with Mom and Joe, or they listen to Joe and now Dad's annoyed. If anything, OP, you are doing this to explicitly put the kids first, because having them in the middle of your and Joe's parenting arguments is dumb and stressful. Exactly. It's exhausting for everyone involved. In this case, it seems like a complete separation is the easiest for everyone. I would also suggest that whoever custody time it is during these special events should make the rules. So if it is OP's parenting time, he gets to decide what the kids will drink. If it is Mom's time, Mom and Joe can decide. My advice to OP would be to communicate this with Mom and Joe via the app, so that everyone all has the same info and the courts can assess it, if needed. Consult a lawyer. You might not want to change custody right now, but you need to document everything. I think your wife will be consulting a lawyer too, claiming you're the bad parent. My lawyer is already aware, and documentation has been started. Next story. Am I the a-hole for confronting my ex-husband's new wife over her treatment of my daughter? I, 38 female, find myself in a complicated situation involving my ex-husband, 40 male, and his new wife, 35 female. We divorced 5 years ago, and while our marriage ended, our priority has always been our 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Initially, everything was smooth. My ex-husband and I shared custody of Lily, and we both made an effort to maintain a friendly co-parenting relationship. However, things took a turn for the worse when my ex-husband introduced Lily to his new girlfriend, now his wife, Sarah. At first, I was happy for my ex-husband to have found love again. But it didn't take long for me to notice that Sarah was treating Lily differently from her own children. She has 2 kids from a previous marriage, and while she's affectionate and kind to them, she often excludes Lily. Lily would come home after her weekends with her dad and Sarah, tearfully recounting incidents where she felt left out, ignored, or even bullied by Sarah's children. Lily's self-esteem took a hit, and she started acting out at home and at school. I tried to address this issue with my ex-husband, explaining how it was affecting Lily's emotional well-being. He assured me that he would talk to Sarah about it. However, nothing seemed to change. Sarah's behavior persisted, and Lily continued to suffer. Feeling helpless, I decided to take matters into my own hands. One day, after dropping Lily off at her dad's place, I asked to speak with Sarah privately. I calmly expressed my concerns and told her how Lily was feeling left out and hurt. I suggested that we could all sit down and discuss how to make this transition easier for Lily. Sarah, however, became defensive and accused me of meddling in her family. She even insinuated that I was trying to drive a wedge between her and my ex-husband. Our conversation quickly escalated into an argument, with neither of us willing to back down. After that confrontation, my ex-husband and I had a heated discussion. He accused me of causing problems in his new marriage and demanded that I stay out of his business. I argued that our daughter's well-being should be our top priority, and I couldn't ignore her pain. In the end, my ex-husband and I haven't spoken since that argument. Lily's situation hasn't improved, and I can't help but wonder if I should have handled things differently. Am I the a-hole for confronting my ex-husband's new wife over her treatment of my daughter, even if it's strained our co-parenting relationship and led to further tensions in their marriage? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Our daughter's well-being should be our top priority. Unfortunately, only one of you thinks this. Time to get evidence. Have daughter keep a diary and you keep a written log of everything she tells you, and get a solicitor. Time to go back to court. Keep a diary and see a psychologist who can speak on her behalf in case the judge won't listen to a child. This is how I finally got to stop visiting my abusive sperm donor father and his awful wife. Not the a-hole. I can't help but wonder if I should have handled things differently. I'm struggling to think of other ways you could have approached this. Lily has been coming home each weekend in tears, with stories of being excluded and bullied, which has been impacting her behavior at home and in school. Your ex clearly hasn't been doing enough to ensure his daughter is as comfortable and safe as possible while she's with him, so of course he stepped in. Any decent parent would. From how you've described it, you were respectful and calm towards Sarah. It was her who chose to escalate this into an argument, and it is your ex's choice to back her up. The fact this is causing tension between them is of no concern to you either. Their marriage is not even a blip on your radar, and if this situation is driving a wedge between them, then they clearly have deep issues that they need to work on. Not the a-hole. Stop sending her. She's old enough to tell a court how she feels, and that she doesn't want to go there. If he wants to have a relationship with her, he can pick her up and take her out for dinner and a movie or activities, and bring her home after. Was coming to comment the same thing. She's old enough to be listened to now. Simply stop sending her, and when he asks, explain how his new family is taking priority over his daughter, and she doesn't feel comfortable there anymore. Last story. Am I the a-hole for giving my son's bedroom to our foster child? My husband and I have been foster parents for over a decade. 2 months ago, we had 4 minor children living in our home. Our 12-year-old biological son, our 8 and 5-year-old adopted sons, and our 21-month-old foster son. Our 22-year-old foster daughter also still lives at home with us, and my 19-year-old son spent the summer back home after his freshman year of college. We also have other adult children that don't live at home but not really relevant. 7 weeks ago, we got a call for an emergency placement of 5 siblings. 17 female, 12 female, 10 male, 7 female, 6 male. We only had 2 spare bedrooms, but had enough spared beds and storage to make it work with the girls in one room and the boys in the other. It now looks like we are going to be fostering the 5 of them for considerably longer than we thought when they were placed with us. And because of the large age gaps between the girls, having them share more long-term isn't really ideal. We already moved the boys a few weeks ago. We bought a triple bunk for our 8 and 5-year-old's room and moved a 6-year-old in with them, then put the 10-year-old's bed into our 12-year-old's room. This allowed the 17-year-old girl to get her own room and the 2 younger girls to share. None of this created any drama, and the boys were all more than happy to share rooms with each other. Now that my 19-year-old is going back to college, we discussed and eventually agreed on turning his bedroom into a room for our 12-year-old girl so she has her own space away from her little sister. He wasn't impressed when I brought up the idea, but agreed. However, before he left back for college a few days ago, he got into an argument with my husband complaining it's unfair that he's lost his room and that he has nowhere to go when he comes back home now. My other adult son also contacted me about the situation to essentially tell me it was a bad idea and that his brother is really upset. And just because he's been away for college a year doesn't mean he is ready to lose his spot in the house. Last year we didn't need the extra space, so his room stayed empty when he was at college. But this year, it makes no sense to leave a bedroom empty, and to make 2 girls 5 years apart in age share a room. He is still welcome home whenever, and if things change or he drops out, we can rearrange things again. Losing his room is temporary, as we don't normally have so many foster kids. When our other kids/grandkids visit, they happily use an air mattress in a den or bunk with a sibling, and he can do the same on his school breaks. He will most likely have his room back by next summer, and if not, we will figure out solutions then. I have explained all this to him, but he's not hearing me. Am I the a-hole? I've bought new decor, etc. for the room, and plan on decorating and moving our foster daughter in tomorrow. Facts: you don't have the room to foster her properly. Facts: you still continue to do so at the cost of your current family, both bio and non-bio. Do with that what you will. I completely agree with this. OP does not have the space to support the number of foster kids she's committed to, at least not in a way that's comfortable for the kids already in the family. When it starts having a negative impact on family dynamics, it's time to stop. As a person who was a kid in this situation, can confirm. I can second this. Some parents take up fostering at the cost of their own kids' well-being and quality of life. There's always the faux caring talk, but the fact is, they're turning their home into a hostel that no longer has space for their own children. Some foster carers try and turn their homes into a hostel for everyone other than themselves. Why not focus on the kids you have now? My parents frequently put the needs of foster and adopted kids over me and my brother, and we resent them heavily even into adulthood. You're the a-hole. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm a middle-aged adult. It is what it is, and I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the life I've lived. But I'm just saying I know it's hard. Doesn't matter if the kid is 10 or 19 or 35, every time he comes home, he probably is reminded of his childhood.